Now, today I'm joined by representatives of the UK's three main parties. That's Paul Thompson, who's the Vice Chairman of Conservatives in Power. So you're very welcome to the programme.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. And Lola May, you're from Labour Abroad, and you're part of the Momentum organisation, like a pro-Jeremy Corbyn pressure group within Labour. You're very welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
And on the telephone from Berlin, unfortunately she wasn't able to join us today, but normally she is the head of communications and PR for Liberal Democrats, should I say, in France. That's Raffaella Kitson-Pantano. Thanks for joining us on the line from Germany. Oh, she has not joined us just yet, but we will get to her when we get her back on the line. So, let's look at the events of the last 24 hours. And I want to put this question first to Paul Thompson. Despite calls from the opposition for Theresa May to resign after scoring a so-called own goal in these elections, she is vowed to truck on, with the legitimacy, however, of her mandate shaken to the core, one could say. Is she making the right move, in your opinion?
Yes, I think so, because politics is a rough game. It is perfectly normal to take hits from time to time, and it is desirable to be able to absorb those hits, prendre les coups, as the French would say, and carry on. I think that although the campaign, in retrospect, could have been better executed, the underlying notion that it is important for Britain, indeed it is also important for the European Union, to have an established negotiating team in order to allow the negotiation to proceed is perfectly correct and valid, and she is extending that argument, if you like, by saying that this stability factor is still needed in the aftermath of the election.
But, I mean, a lot of people today now, when we see there was a dramatic reduction in the amount of seats a Conservative actually got in this election, and even from the outset, when the snap election was called 7 weeks ago, it was all about Theresa May. And even today, when she went up in front of the cameras outside Downing Street, it was all about Theresa May. Is she making the right move for Britain, or just her own career?
First of all, I don't think it's quite correct to speak of a dramatic reduction in the number of seats. I think it was about
12.
Yes, I wouldn't call that dramatic.
Was it a dramatic increase then for Labour?
Labour made a more substantial increase. It certainly was a big disappointment for the Conservative Party. There's absolutely no doubt about that. I don't think making a distinction between the personal agenda of a public figure and the public action of a public figure is really a very meaningful distinction. Politicians prefer winning elections to losing them. They prefer sustaining their career rather than calling it a day. And so her reaction is perfectly normal for anyone who has serious political ambitions. And it may be true that the campaign was too personalised. This is one reproach that I have that has also come from within the Conservative Party. And although personally I'm a great admirer of Theresa May, and I thought her very centrist one nation strategy was perfectly sound, turning her back to a significant extent on the sort of hardness, the unfeelingness of Thatcherism. I think her certain lack of charisma and excessive personalization of the campaign probably were tactical errors, and I would like to think that she will learn from them.
Okay, well, look, I'll come back to in a few minutes on various points, Paul, but I'd like to just move over to Lola May. Okay, 12-point decrease for the Conservatives, but a very big increase or more significant increase, one could say, for the Labour Party. So it's a very positive result for Labour, who were trailing the Tories by more than 20 points 7 weeks ago. What's the next move now for the party? How will Jeremy Corbyn capitalise on this?
I'd just like to say firstly that I am so thrilled with the result that we have. It's the first time in my life, I was born in 1998, it's the first time in my life that there has been a gain in Labour seats. And I think the next action for Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party should be to provide a strong and stable opposition. With the Conservative Party looking likely to go into coalition with the DUP, it's going to be essential that we represent everyone who has now voted for us. And the turnout, especially of the youth voters, was 70%, which is around 70%.
Yeah, it was coming up. It was at 68.9 or something like that.
It was very high. Mm-hmm. And that's incredible. And the Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party need to do everything they can to represent the people who have put enough faith in them to come out and vote.
Well, now on the back of this significant gain in seats, is it conceivable that Corbyn may actually try and counter Theresa May by trying to form a minority government? I mean, it is a possibility.
I think the Lib Dems have already said that they're not going to go into coalition with anyone again.
Well, with the SNP, I think they also have a hatchet to bury with the SNP. But
yeah.
So you think that Jeremy is just going to continue and really set up a strong opposition?
I really hope so. Yeah, I think it's going to be incredible.
Well, Lola, we're going to move on now to our other guest, who is Rafaela, who is from the Lib Dems. You're joining us on the line from Berlin. Can you hear us loud and clear here in Paris?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me loud and clear in Berlin?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks very much for taking our call. Now, we're looking at the various sides here at the outcome of yesterday's election, and let's look for the Lib Dems. There was a net gain of 3 seats for the Lib Dems, bringing the total to 12. But former leader Nick Clegg lost his Sheffield Hallam seat to Labour, and the anti-Brexit platform, it would appear, didn't gain traction that many supporters were hoping would come following the disastrous result from the 2015 election. I just want to ask you, Rafaela, where now for the Lib Dems?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Actually, to be honest, last night we increased our number of MPs by almost 50%. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge achievement, and it's down to the hard work of members and campaigners across the UK and abroad. We gained stunning victories in Bath, Edinburgh West, Caithness, and in Oxford West and Abingdon. A third of our MPs are female, and we have elected our first ever ethnic minority female MP. So I don't think that this is a result that we should be shy of. On the contrary, you mentioned Nick Clegg. Nick Clegg served his country and his party with great skill, resolve and dignity, whilst both Deputy Prime Minister and party leader. And so now looking to the future, I'm a Lib Dem in France. I'm head of communications and public relations for the Lib Dems in France. And what we will now be fighting for are 2 key issues. The first is the right to vote for Britons abroad. And the second is the setup of abroad constituencies. And these are really things that are key to our heart for the Lib Dems in France. With regards to the overall party, I think the Liberal Democrats were very clear in their manifesto that they wanted to protect the rights of EU citizens living in the UK, retain the free movement of the EU citizens, and give the people of the United Kingdom their say on the Brexit deal. And I think that we will continue fighting for that and make sure that whatever deal the government tries to break, that we will actually have our say on whether we agree to it or not, through a referendum not on Brexit, but on the Brexit deal we're trying to negotiate.
Rafaela, that's all very, very concise, very well put forward, but it seems that it isn't really resonating with the electorate. What else has to be done to actually hit this message home for people to get back on the wagon?
I think it is actually resonating with the electorate, because if you think back of where we were 50 days ago, when Theresa May called for a snapshot general election, everybody thought, and I think she believed it herself, and you can ask my Conservative counterpart, that she was going to strengthen her majority. And if anything, the fact that she didn't and that the numbers decreased is an indication that no, the electorate doesn't want a hard Brexit. If anything from this election, the hard Brexit, I believe, is now out of the question. So even if the Lib Dems are not in the hundreds of seats, as I mentioned, we've nonetheless increased by 50%. We've come back a long way. The number of seats we had to start off with was not very high. So any increase is an increase and is a success. And I think the fact that Labour did so well is an indication that the people of Britain are not happy with the way that things have been going on since the referendum on Brexit. And I think they still want to have their say on the deal, on how we're going to manage the after-Brexit referendum. That has never been clear, and we need to address it now.
OK, Rafaela, thank you very much. So we're going to go from the anti-Brexit party over to, well, the people that have to negotiate Brexit, and that, of course, is the Tory administration that will be coming up. Now, Brexit talks are due to begin on June 19th, and today, the chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, was quite magnanimous today in saying, well, negotiations will start when the UK is ready. Some other EU kind of liberal firebrands have been less magnanimous. But with the weakened mandate at home, what does this result mean for Britain's position while negotiating a divorce with such hard negotiators such as Barnier and Guy Verhofstadt?
I think that the magnanimity of Mr. Barnier is something which has not yet been fully put to the test.
It was his magnanimous comment rather than anything else. I think he was one of the more generous ones this
morning. The 2-year clock is already ticking, as we all know. I emphatically disagree with the comment of our guest in Berlin that that the result, or one result of this election, will be that a hard Brexit is off the table. The exact nature of what Brexit should be was not really discussed in much detail in the campaign. A bit odd, given how important it is. But it wasn't discussed by most of the parties on the campaign. Precisely,
Tories included, of course.
Precisely, yes. I was referring to all of the parties. That's right. The clear and the Labour Party has not taken a clear position from what I know. I don't purport to know absolutely everything that has been said on whether they want a hard Brexit or not. The FT today claimed that Labour also was for a hard Brexit, which I found a bit surprising. Anyway, the point is that there will be a negotiation. It will be a tough negotiation, but the fact that the Conservative Party and the DUP, assuming they do form of government, will have a modest majority, will not necessarily hinder them in the negotiation, in my opinion, because, and paradoxically, it may even help, because a negotiation process is always a fragile thing. It will be, in a way, even more fragile because of the thin majority. And I think that, therefore, there will be a greater reluctance on both sides to threaten the exercise of nuclear options, to knock over the apple cart in a way that could produce a non-negotiated Brexit, which is a real possibility. No one has an interest in that, and although the rhetoric from the EU side has been very aggressive in recent months, and even more so in recent weeks, I am entirely certain that their interest is to have a sound agreement that protects the future and the coherence of the EU, but that also, in one way or another, allows a good relationship with the UK to continue.
But if they're getting into bed with the DUP, who are very much against a hard Brexit, who are very much against a hard border with the Republic of Ireland, what will come out of that? I mean, they've got 5 days now, potentially, to negotiate forming a government. They have up until Tuesday. What kind of concessions do you think that Theresa May will be able to make to the Unionist Party?
There was no hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland prior to both the UK and Ireland joining the common market as it then was.
Well, in 1973.
There was what was called a free movement area, something like that.
There was always a border between the north and south, and that was only slightly dismantled from 1993 onwards.
I don't think that's right. I think there was a free movement agreement between.
No, you could move freely, but you had to move through a military checkpoint and have your car searched.
Okay, but still, there was a principle of freedom of movement.
Yes, you didn't have to show a passport, for example.
Okay. Anyway, it's a significant issue, of course, a very important one, but I find it impossible to imagine that that issue cannot be addressed. So I don't really view it as being one of the tough issues, because there's a common interest in having that resolved. So it's hard to imagine that it wouldn't be.
Okay, well, I would like to just come over to our Labour representative here, and that, of course, is Lola May. Lola, reactions here in Paris. You've been very active in the Labour movement here in Paris. I mean, Le Figaro, which is the right-wing newspaper, one could say, or definitely right-of-centre newspaper here, has praised Labour's success as an impressive rebound, and also said that given Corbyn's spectacular and powerful comeback, he could assert himself as a kingmaker. What have you and your colleagues been saying this morning? Would you agree on that?
I would, I think. Jeremy Corbyn has consistently shown that campaigning is what he is very, very good at. He's won 2 Labour Party elections, leadership elections, and now he's brought our seats up. So yeah, I hope he can be seen as a kingmaker, and I think that all of us are very, very happy. I certainly am over the moon with this result. And
have you been following? Well, this is really generally to everybody. We've all been following the results that were coming out last night and this morning, and there were some shockers, such as Alex Salmond up north of the border, who lost his seat, and that was Alex Salmond, who was the former Scottish National Party leader. And the SNP themselves, they lost 21 seats, I think they went down from 56 that they won in 2015. So they've had a big punch in the chin there. Now, Nicola Sturgeon receiving such a significant loss, where in your opinion, or how in your opinion, will this loss affect a second referendum that they've been looking for up north, that the SNP have been looking for, like Indie Ref 2?
I think the SNP losses have shown that the Scottish people don't want another referendum. Britain has had so many elections in the last few years, and Scotland has had one more than the rest of us. So I can really understand why they wouldn't want to have another one, and they're showing it with choosing to not elect the SNP another time. And
Paul, in your opinion, I mean, the Tories did very well north of the border in this election. So, I mean, do you wonder that the SNP's loss, was it, as you have intoned there, Lola, was it voter fatigue, or have the Tories really tweaked their policies to woo the electorate in Scotland?
Well, I think both. The vote in Scotland was characterised before yesterday as probably being a vote on the idea of a second referendum, because that issue was put forward by all of the unionist parties, including the Labour Party, of course, front and centre. And the outcome of the election would appear very clearly to endorse that line. And so I think it's unlikely that there will be another referendum in the next 5 or 6 years at the least. And that is significant for the Brexit process, if I can swing back to that for a second, because the government will not have to fight a war on 2 fronts, which it would have had to do if there was, I mean, the government could have simply refused to hold a second referendum anyway. Of course, that's their legal right, but politically it would have been problematical to have to continually do so. And now that issue has just been swished off the table for the time being.
Now, I'd just like to go back briefly to Raffaella Kitson-Pantano, who's in Berlin. We're actually running out of time, Raffaella, but just one quick question now that I want to put to you as a pro-European Party member. Do you think that Theresa May will remain as Prime Minister, or do you expect fresh elections within the next few months, in your opinion?
I just wanted to mention about the SNP, because I'm actually a Scottish Liberal Democrat originally, so I'm Scottish, and I wanted to concur with my 2 counterparts, but effectively I don't think we will be looking to a referendum anytime soon. And I think that the SNP result a few years back was artificially inflated with regards to the Lib Dems, and that now we're seeing more usual numbers. But effectively, I don't think we'll be heading for another referendum on independence. With regards to Theresa May, I was personally very surprised that she didn't resign there and then this morning. I don't know, I can't foresee the future, but effectively, if she were to resign in the next 6 months, it wouldn't come as a surprise in the slightest. It's known that that's the way the Tories proceed within their own party. So I think if I had been her, which fortunately I'm not, I would have resigned with dignity this morning. She didn't. Good luck to her for the next 6 months, because it's going to be a very, very tricky ride. Okay,
my thanks, Raffaella Kitson-Pantano, joining us on the line there from Germany. And unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. We have 30 seconds left. If you have any words you would like to add before we sign off, please do, Paul.
Well, I would like to congratulate Jeremy Corbyn on his authenticity and his clarity of vision, and I think that that's a credit to politics.
I'd also like to thank Jeremy Corbyn and everyone who turned out.
Okay, and my thanks to all our guests here today for this special edition of Live on Live. Have a good weekend. Back on Monday. Bye-bye.